happened an age ago. But when I recall, I see it true. On a night of wintry fog, starting with Godwyn the Golden, Queen Marika was driven to the brink. The shattering ensued, a war that wrought only darkness. The Elden Ring was broken. But by whom? And why?
When us Tarnished are called back to the lands between, we find it falling apart, shattered. And most well-read Tarnished know that Ranni the Witch is ultimately behind the Knight of Black Knives, the impetus for Queen Marika's despair and what caused her to shatter the Elden Ring, which is what left the land in the sorry state we find it. But even well-read Tarnished find gaps in the history of the House of the Moon. Why exactly did Ranni plan the Knight of Black Knives? We know she did it to escape her Empyrean flesh, at least that's what she tells us, but is there more to it? After all, a lot more demigods died that day than just Godwyn, even though his was by far the most horrific. Today, I'm gonna delve into the details and hidden lore of Elden Ring to form a plausible, but perhaps not likely theory, behind Ranni's motivation to murder her siblings in cold blood, why Rennala was rebelled against by the Academy, and the history of the knights found in Liurnia. My name is Max and I'm going to be your host for this video. Welcome to Crackpot. On this channel I'm gonna delve into Elden Ring lore, focusing on the parts of the game where we simply don't have enough information, giving us room to theorize. So if you're looking for cited item descriptions for every statement, this is the wrong channel for you. However, if you enjoy putting on your tinfoil hat and speculating, feel free to subscribe to join me on this strange and mysterious journey. Chapter 1. The House of the Moon. The Carian royalty began in the mountain tops of the giants as simple astrologers, who tracked and followed the stars. This was both a scientific and religious study, as the fate of every living creature was bound within them. One particular astrologer, a young woman, on a dark and chilly night would meet the full moon amongst the mountain tops and become its disciple. This was the beginning of the House of the Moon, and one day this young astrologer would become queen. During their studies in the mountains, the astrologers noticed something in their telescopes. Tracking the stars as usual, they had stumbled upon something that would change their history forever. Through their laborious studies, they had managed to somehow summon the stars themselves. And soon a cataclysm was unleashed. A violent rain of the stars' amber, their life force, rained down upon the land. And at once the astrologers knew what they had to do. They followed the falling stars to the lowlands of Liurnia. There they found large deposits of star amber, glintstone. With this newfound magical power, the House of Caria was born, with the young astrologer as their queen, Rennala. In Liurnia they raised castles and outposts, churches and schools. They started an order of magical knights to protect the queen's lands. The Royal Carian Academy taught their mages in the ways of the stars, meteors, moons and more. And their peasants and slaves toiled away in the glintstone mines for their master's insatiable hunger for the stars' amber. However, this dominance of the House of the Moon was not to last. Chapter 2. The Liurnian Wars. The Golden Host had ascended upon the mountaintops and slaughtered their old comrades, the fire giants. The Golden Ones had even managed to subdue the ancient dragons, and now they turned their gaze upon the lowlands and the Carian queen. But to challenge Rennala was to challenge fate itself, and the Carians would not give in without a fight. To this end, they recruited lowborn into the academy and instructed them in basic sorceries. These knights of the Academy were not masters of the arcane by any means, but used simple and easy sorceries and even stooped as low as using foe sorceries. But a lowly knight is elevated far beyond their means using even simple sorceries. And so the Carians called their banners and went to war. The Golden Host and the forces of the Moon's clash must have been one of the grandest battles in history prior to the Shattering. Through the Carian Knights' intelligence and prowess with their magics, their mages' endless onslaught of glintstone stars, and the bulk force of the Academy Knights and their soldiers, the Carians managed to beat back the Golden Host and held Liurnia for the Moon, a feat no other force in the lands had managed. But to truly show their status as equals, they beat back the forces of gold not once, but twice. Their leader, Radagon, finally saw the truth. He could not change fate itself. And I think Miriel tells this story best.
Concerning the miracle of this Church of Vows, Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Rennala. The order of the Erdtree and the fate of the Moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven. This miracle blesses the Church to this day.
Soon the Queen was pregnant, and eventually blessed with 3 children, the Praetor Rykard, the General Radon, and Lunar Princess Ranni.
Willful traitors. All.
Yes, Morgoth, we know. Chapter 3. The Grand Lie. Out of all of her children, there was no doubt that Ranni was closest to her mother. The Carians and their kind are matriarchal, and Ranni would eventually take her place as queen. Rennala introduced her beloved Ranni to her own moon, embracing her as the queen's one true heir. But Ranni was more than her brothers. She was Empyrean. This title is granted upon demigods who are able to carry the Elden Ring within them, and thus creating an order of their own. So not only was Ranni Rennala's successor, she was also Marika's. This was a great honor, as not only would Ranni ascend Rennala's throne, but become god of the Golden Order as well. But this promise was broken, and the duplicitous Radagon would return to the capital, leaving the queen behind. And eventually, this path would lead Ranni to the Knight of Black Knives, and ultimately the shattering of the Elden Ring. And this never sat right with me, Ranni murdering Godwyn and the rest of the nameless demigods we find within the mausoleums, only for the simple fact she wanted to escape her body. And why did she hate this body so much? Why murder so many demigods when Godwyn would have been enough? I think I have the answer. Radagon had replaced Rennala's own child with a child of him and Marika long ago. Ranni was never hers. Ranni is a bastard. As we know from Melania's remembrance, an Empyrean is born from a single god, not a moon maiden and her consort. Radagon was not completely heartless, however. He left Rennala with the Amber Egg, the rune of the unborn, a symbol of her lost child to cradle in her grief. And there is no doubt this broke the queen. She lost her vigor and her fierce nature, becoming a recluse within the highest tower of the Academy, ever clutching her sweetlings. Chapter 4. The Rebellion. The Academy Knights that had served the moon faithfully since the days of the Liurnian Wars was obviously outraged. Their enemy had infiltrated their ranks, seduced their queen, and replaced their princess with an impostor. They would not stand for it. They locked the bewitched Rennala in her secluded tower and declared war upon the Carian impostor Ranni. Thus they changed their name to the Knights of the Cuckoo. A cuckoo is a bird that replaces another bird's egg, tricking them to raising their baby for them, just as Radagon and Marika had done with Rennala. They descended upon Caria Manor, but was caught by a magical trap, devised by the Carian mages. The onslaught of magic decimated their numbers. There now stands a sword monument below the manor in remembrance, the resting place of the contemptible cuckoos, lost in the siege of Caria Manor. To no surprise, the Carians don't view the rebellious smallfolk knights in kind light, and E.G. can tell us some about this day.
Brave Tarnished. A word of warning, if you please. This territory once belonged to the Carian royal family. Their manor lies not far beyond this point. When the Raya Lucari Academy turned on the Carians, the Knights of the Cuckoo descended on this tract. After leveling it, they carried on to the manor. The Carians were taken off guard, but their strength had not waned, and they repelled the Knights' onslaught by conjuring an enchanted snare that remains potent to this day. That is why I say, Tarnished, don't go near the manor, unless you wish to lie with the corpses of the heedless Knights of the Cuckoo.
Now the Carians might have rebelled against Ranni for this indiscretion, but for Ranni, it was personal. Chapter 5. Ranni the Witch. Ranni had been lied to for her entire life. Rennala was never her biological mother. The Empyrean body she had cherished, and the order she was to create, a shameful lie. Her beloved brothers only stepbrothers in truth. And this is what set young Ranni down the dark path of the Empyrean. She would seek out the Snow Crone and learn her ways. She would then seek out the Eternal Cities and their assassins, and ask for their aid in a most dire plot. She would murder Godwyn the Golden along with her own Empyrean flesh in the ultimate act of rebellion against the Golden Order and their so-called god, in revenge for what they did to her and what they did to her mother Rennala. But what of the child Ranni replaced? The egg plucked from Rennala's nest? A story for another day. Thank you guys so much for watching this cracked pot theory. I've had this brewing for quite some time. The Cuckoo Knight's name always bothered me, along with the description of Melania's Great Rune clearly stating that an Empyrean is one born from a single god. These two things are the main evidence for this theory, along with the environmental storytelling. I do sincerely think it adds another interesting layer to Ranni's motivation to plan the Night of Black Knives, and explains why she was so eager to leave her Empyrean flesh behind, and why she rebelled against her two fingers. It also gives further explanation to Rennala's fall from power and why she's so obsessed with her egg. I know there are plenty of holes in it, especially regarding Empyreans being chosen by two fingers and not necessarily having to be born from a single god. There is also not a lot of textual evidence as to why the Cuckoo Knights rebelled, but them specifically rebelling against the Carians and not the Academy, along with their order's name, gives a pretty strong hint to this theory. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video and my look at Elden Ring's lore from outside the box. I'm relatively new to YouTube and I'm still figuring out the identity of this channel, so bear with me as it evolves over time. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next cracked pot theory.